Hi, this is Dr. Neurosurgery Greenberg, and we are discussing pituitary hormones and how to evaluate them. So, first off, we start off with gonadotropic hormone secretion, in which you do the serum, LH, and FSH, and sometimes you can even check the estradiol and the total testosterone, right? And then prolactin levels, you can get serum prolactin levels. Some important points to remember when considering prolactin levels is, first of all, if the prolactin level is more than 200, then it is highly likely that it's a macroadenoma. It's a huge beast. Okay. But if it's less than 200 nanograms per ml, then it's a high chance it is a microadenoma, 80% chance. And after that, we also know that the blood samples should be taken mid morning, not early morning, because the stress is high, the cortisol is high, it can affect the readings. Then, sometimes, if the physical examination has been done, in that case as well, prolactin will be different. And other than that, as there are fluctuations in the prolactin level itself, and then the machine has its own intrinsic, what you can call it, error. So there is some degree of error in whatever reading you're going to get. And if a patient has been exposed to animal sera, then he will develop heterophilic antibodies and they will also affect the result. And there are two effects that are exam favorite, which are the stalk effect and the hook effect. So as we know, prolactin is the only pituitary hormone which is primarily under inhibitory inhibition regulation, and the dopamine or the prolactin inhibitory factors are coming from the stalk and the hypothalamus. So if they are injured or compressed by any tumor, then that inhibitory factor is not going to be released, and the prolactin level is going to be slightly elevated, not in thousands, but slightly elevated. So what is the rule of thumb? The rule of thumb is that the percent chance of an elevated prolactin being due to a prolactinoma is one half of the prolactin. So if the prolactin level was, let's suppose, 150 nanograms per ml, then the stalk effect or the compression or injury to hypothalamus or pituitary stalk is going to cause half of that value, that is 75 nanograms per ml. That is the amount of prolactin that you will see elevated. Okay, so after the surgery is done and the stalk effect is there, then 150 and add 75, you get a value 225 nanograms per ml. That is your cutoff. The next effect is going to be hook effect, in which extremely high prolactin level is going to overwhelm the machine, the assay. And actually, what happens is that the large numbers of prolactin molecules prevent the formation of the necessary complexes that can produce falsely low results. So, if you have a very big adenoma in the MRI and you get a normal prolactin level, you can ask call the laboratory to dilute the sample multiple times to get a value actually really closer to the prolactin level. So, and sometimes even the lab reports can actually state that prolactin level is more than 500, more than 1000, something like that, nanograms per ml. So, if the lab does that, it is because the machine is unable to detect such a high level. Its cutoff is 500 or 1000 or whatever. So, in order to do that, you have to call the lab and tell them to dilute the sample so much that you get a value that the machine can actually read. And then you make a calculation and then you give the actual number. And why is this number important? This number is important, number one, to get an actual real baseline value, and number two, if you get a value that is actually more than 500 nanograms per ml, it indicates that surgery alone will not be able to cure or normalize the prolactin levels, and you have to tell the patient beforehand that the levels are so high that surgery is not going to be curative. And in prolactinomas, we know we go for medical therapy first. All right. But if the medical therapy failed and still the prolactin level was high, you have to proceed to surgery. And even then, you have to tell the patient that, okay, even after a medication, even after surgery, the levels will be high, they will not normalize, and you will need further treatment. So you have to tell the patient earlier. That is why getting the real time actual baseline value is so important. And coming to a macroprolactinoma, it occurs. Some macroprolactinemia actually occurs when the prolactin levels polymerize and form a chain, and when you measure it, its value is low. Okay, and it has reduced biological activity actually. And if the patient is asymptomatic, don't do anything about it. Then we come to the growth hormone. If you know that first of all, the growth hormone is secreted in a pulsatile manner. It's a very fluctuating kind of hormone. It is affected by sleep, anything you do actually. So the best thing to do is to measure IGF-1 or somatomedin C level, and this is a recommended initial test. And if you check a single random growth hormone level, it is not a reliable indicator. Don't do it. And then how will you check the posterior pituitary? Actually, pituitary tumors don't like the posterior pituitary very much. Mets prefer the posterior pituitary. So how can you check? If in the rare case you are suspecting a posterior pituitary tumor, you will check the adequacy of ADH by doing the water deprivation test and looking at the concentration of urine. And if that is deranged, then you will do serum ADH in response to infusion of hypertonic saline. And that is all for today, and I will see you in the next presentation.